We're looking into the issue of affordable housing in Bloomington. As the city tries to increase the number of units for low-income families, the business community says there's another population that's struggling. In part 2 of our series, we look at why so many middle-income earners are also hurting for housing. When Lindsay Joy Wenning and her husband Jason moved to Bloomington a few years ago, they quickly learned there's a lot to love.
We go to the farmers market on Saturdays and all the community events like the arts fair and Taste of Bloomington's coming up, things like that.
So they decided to make their connection to the community more permanent and buy a house. They didn't think finding a place would be an issue. They both have good jobs. Lindsay works for the state and Jason for the city. But that didn't help.
Most of the houses, especially in the area codes that deliver food or groceries or have good schools, start about $250,000 and quickly go up to $500,000. And that'll always be out of our reach.
So we really had to get out of town before we could finally find some place that was going to work for us to go ahead and move into and still be able to focus on, starting our careers and our family.
They ended up here on a busy stretch of Old State Road 37 in Monroe County. While the house is great, they'd like to be in a more kid-friendly area now that they have a 1-year-old son. They just don't know if it's possible.
We could make it work if it was closer to $200,000, but we'd have to stretch ourselves pretty thin when it comes to, daycare, groceries, all the normal stuff.
Their dilemma isn't unique. Lynn Coyne just retired from the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation. He says the Bloomington business community is concerned about the lack of housing available for middle-income employees, who most often are interested in single-family homes.
We're talking about homes for the median wage earner. These are the folks that normally would buy a home and gain the value of that home, perhaps sell it and move on to another home. They're just not available for them anymore.
There's a couple of reasons for that. Monroe County is among the bottom third of Indiana counties when it comes to its median income. At the same time, it has the most expensive housing market in the state, and prices keep going up. Data from the Indiana Association of Realtors shows the median sales price of homes in Monroe County increased by nearly 20% from April of last year to this year.
When we have a short supply, prices go up, and we are seeing that here. And it's more evident in Bloomington, where we have less new construction, than it is in many other areas of the state.
That's concerning for companies who are trying to recruit workers to the area. Cook Group plans to add 500 employees over the next decade as it expands in Bloomington. But there already isn't enough housing for its current workers. The company did a survey last year to gauge the need.
Based on that survey, we would estimate, 400 to 500 Cook-based families in the region, in the Monroe County region that would need or be looking for purchasing single-family homes.
Bloomington Mayor John Hamilton's made affordable housing one of his priorities. But much of the city's efforts focus on increasing the number of low-income units available.
I wouldn't say that what the administration's doing downtown around the affordable housing issue isn't important. It is. Certainly it's important, but that's not the only component of our community that is in need of investment in affordable housing.
Hamilton acknowledges housing across all price points in Bloomington is a challenge and says the city is exploring ways to help more people afford single-family homes.
Another way is, frankly, buy land on behalf of the public that we then steer into home ownership development. I would be surprised if the current hospital site, as we do the redevelopment of that, I expect that redevelopment will include some affordable home ownership opportunities.
But the land in Bloomington is limited and pricey. So Hall says to truly address the housing shortage, the solution needs to be regional.
Ellettsville has new construction. Ellettsville has lower prices, and Ellettsville school scores are quite good. We're seeing a lot of families take a very strong look at the Ellettsville area.
Hall says more housing developments, like the ones going up in Ellettsville, are needed to address the shortage. Regional Opportunity Initiatives recently did an 11-county study to assess the current housing market and future demand. It will release the results later this summer. When that happens, stakeholders say it will take partnerships between local governments and the private sector to implement solutions.
Well, fundamentally, it takes a community-wide effort. Certainly land use regulation, land use policies, whether you'll allow subdivisions or not, homes to be built, that needs to be looked at very seriously in terms of the housing crisis.
Developers of housing additions and that sort of thing, I mean, we're gonna have to try and help provide incentives as government, but also as a community to help de-risk some of that for them so that they're willing to invest in the housing stock that's needed.
Families like the Wennings hope a solution is coming sooner rather than later. They want to have a future in Bloomington.
Bloomington is wonderful. We don't want to leave, that's for sure. We're hoping not to get priced out of living in town.
For now, that's the reality many hopeful residents are faced with. Tina Peterson is the president and CEO of Regional Opportunity Initiatives and the Community Foundation of Bloomington and Monroe County. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
You've been doing a lot of work in this area. We mentioned that 11 county study that ROI recently did. Why was there that need?
You know, we have an incredible opportunity for job growth in this region. That may come as a surprise to some folks, but we have some amazing sectors here: advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and defense. Barriers, there's a couple that are frequently cited. One is housing, one is broadband. And so as we're thinking about how we address those quality of life issues, we decided we really needed to understand the issue rather assuming that we knew what it was.
I know you have not released the results yet, but can you give us a little preview of maybe some of the big takeaways from that study?
Sure. We're going to need about 14,000 new units in the region in the next decade, really, by 2030. Those are going to be really in every category except for those for empty nesters. So everything we would think of as from affordable housing to workforce housing and beyond. It varies a little bit community to community. In Monroe County, we really lack single-family houses, really in the price range of $200,000 to $300,000 is where our biggest gap is. But in the rest of the region, they need more rentals, right? We have some significant issues around infrastructure that need to be addressed. Really need to think about some funding pools to deal with gap financing, some risk sharing between government and private public sector if we're really going to tackle these challenges.
You just mentioned some of the possible solutions. How quickly do we need to address this issue?
We need it now. I mean, there's
there's
no question. Now, this is obviously, we base this on a 1% growth rate. It varies slightly county by county, and all those jobs aren't going to come at once. But there's no question that this is a bit of a boom time for our key sectors in this region, and we need to be ready to respond over the next decade.
Well, we really look forward to seeing that report and doing some additional reporting on those numbers.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Well, we want to hear your questions about the changing face of Bloomington. You can join the conversation by going to WTIU.org/